I'm Craig Kenneth, a relationship coach and a psychotherapist. Every relationship is different and every breakup is different. Work with me and you'll get professional help on your situation. And if you're in no contact, focused on personal growth, my workbook series, The Knowledge, will help you make changes like you've never made before. Available now at AskCraig.net. Hi there, I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And in this video, we're going to be talking to you about sex and the anxious attachment style. Intimacy, closeness, sex, all of those things are kind of together, blended together. And how we bond with our caregivers winds up being how we form our romantic relationships in the future. How much closeness we need or want, how much space we need or want. And that will come out later on life. So people that have an avoidant attachment style are going to be different in regards to sex. And people that are anxious are going to have different needs and feelings regarding intimacy. So we're going to talk about that today because it's good to understand what if your partner's anxious, how sex is going to impact them, or if you're anxious, how it's going to impact you that you might not even be aware of.
Exactly. And we do have a video about sex in the avoidant attachment style that this video is a follow-up of. So if you are interested in learning more, please check out that video. It has the same title, just avoidant attachment style. So be on the lookout for that.
All right.
So we'll start out by saying that for the anxious attachment style, and really even for the secure attachment style, sex is a way to soothe ourselves. It's a primal way of feeling connected with a person, connected with your partner, and increasing that bond. And so if you really think about it, we're talking about eye contact, we're talking about physical touch, we're talking about breath. In a way, sex is co-regulation.
Vulnerability.
Yeah, there's lots to it that keep yourself calm, that can calm your partner. So for the anxious attachment style, if you're thinking about somebody who generally has anxiety that their partner will leave or who needs more reassurance than others in a relationship, sex can really be used as a resource for that of, I feel connected with my partner when we are intimate.
Absolutely. And so, you know, you might be with somebody who has an anxious attachment style, or you might be anxious yourself. And one of the things that people with an anxious attachment style have is they have this ability to be more connected with their emotions and their feelings, right? It's kind of, they're more in tune with it, whereas the avoidant is not so in tune with it. And so for the anxious person, being intimate and close with somebody is important. It feels more meaningful to them. And so they feel like if I'm being this close to somebody that it matters, and not to take that for lightly or for granted.
And this is also something that I wish those with more avoidant attachment styles would understand a little bit better. Because I think in the mind of the avoidant, blending emotions and sex can be scary, or it can lessen the intensity of the sex. You know, sometimes it can be easier to compartmentalize those things and see them as separate. Maybe you feel more comfortable when there's less emotions. But there is so much to be unlocked when you blend the two. And this is something that I do think the anxious attachment style understands a little bit more of because they're connected with emotions.
Yeah.
They're able to blend emotions and sex. And
it's not just physical.
Right.
Where for the avoidant, it could just be like a physical act. Someone with an anxious attachment style might give more meaning to intimacy. You know, they value it more. It's something that they're sharing that's deeper. Right? It's not just this physical act. They're going to feel vulnerable, emotionally vulnerable. You're physically vulnerable, but you're also emotionally vulnerable to being close to somebody and those feelings or desires or, you know, fantasies that come out, you know, that you might be ashamed or embarrassed to share. So there is a vulnerability to it. And what you may see with some partners is they may get overwhelmed by it. It's too much, and it freaks them out. And especially if they maybe think you're going to abandon them afterwards, or that you're not really interested in them as a person, that you just want the sex. They could feel like, why am I giving all of these feelings to you, and I feel close to you, and I value this connection, and you're running out the door.
Right. And somebody with a more anxious attachment style might feel safe in the container of sex and being able to say, more vulnerable things that they would outside of it. So you might hear a partner say, I love you, or, other things about the relationship that are emotionally heavy that maybe their partner, if they are more avoidant, which sometimes it can be that dynamic of anxious and avoidant, would get very overwhelmed by that. Yeah.
So somebody that has more of an anxious attachment style is probably going to be more likely to share these vulnerable thoughts or feelings when you're being intimate, sometimes shortly afterwards. I know I've had somebody tell me the first time while we were being intimate that they loved me. You know what I mean? And when you hear it, it's like, wow, it's really powerful. You know what I mean? It makes that connection feel like, oh my gosh, like, maybe you thought that they did, and then they tell you. Sometimes people will just say it to use you or take you for granted, take advantage of you. I know in that particular situation it wasn't. But yeah, so, a lot of things will come out when you're being intimate with somebody.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the anxious attachment style is more in tune with their emotions. Feelings like sadness, feelings like, disappointment, all of these things are a little bit...
Speak for yourself, disappointment. I don't know what you're talking about.
I just mean feelings in general. They could be positive feelings too.
Positive feelings of disappointment?
No, that's separate from the disappointment. They might be a little bit closer on the surface. And so sometimes after sex, you might experience an emotional outburst. Sometimes you'll see people cry after sex. Some feelings might come up related to their attachment style, related to their fear of abandonment or, insecurity in the relationship.
Or disappointment.
If you have somebody cry after sex because of how disappointed they are, you gotta work on some.
Somebody's listening right now thinking, that was me.
Maybe. It's okay. There's all areas of growth. That we can work on. Sometimes the person with a more anxious attachment style may use sex as a tool against abandonment. So we really want you to think about this is sex being used almost as this prop to lessen their fear of getting abandoned more so than it is as a bonding tool or as feeling connected or for what it is.
Like a manipulation.
Exactly. And sometimes after a breakup, you'll see people being intimate with their ex thinking that, okay, this is going to be the thing that reels them back into the relationship.
Yeah. And it's tricky. Sometimes I say okay, sometimes I would advise it. It depends upon the situation.
It really does. Yeah. It really does. And you just want to be careful as far as your intentions. And I have seen situations where, it is, the person will tell me, well, I thought that because we had sex, this would be the thing that would turn things around.
Yeah.
It has to be more than just sex to repair a relationship. So consider that also, why you're using sex. If you are using sex, what's the reasons, the motives? Are you into the moment itself? Is this something that's good for your own mental health to do?
Yeah. Are you just doing it to try and lure them back in?
Another thing that the anxious attachment style might struggle with is getting in their head during sex. So sometimes when we are in the moment, our mind can start to wander, especially when we have issues in relating with people, especially when we have fears of abandonment, and especially when we know that the relationship isn't at its strongest point. So sometimes it will be towards the end of a relationship and you can feel your partner distancing and you get into this even more desperate space of the sex has to be really good or else they're going to leave. If the sex is bad, I'm just going to get abandoned. And so we'll put extra pressure on ourselves, and this can lead to actually more dysfunction in the bedroom because we are more focused on impressing our partner and trying to be good enough for them to stay versus being actually present in the moment and connected with them.
Well, when you're anxious, you're struggling with the future a lot of times, and so it keeps you out of the present. So it makes sense.
Exactly. And those with more anxious attachment styles might also be concerned with what sex means. You've touched on this earlier, of they might get into their head of, is the sex meaning more to me than it is to them? And we start to think, okay, where is this relationship going? I need some more commitment before this. And we start thinking these thoughts during, which can impact how present we are. Now, it's okay to have these thoughts, but when they start to become intrusive and they start to enter into that sexual space, then it can really mess with the bond that the two of you have. These are conversations that are better suited for, when the two of you aren't naked, ideally. And so those intrusive thoughts can really impact the sexual connection. And sometimes they can be intrusive thoughts of abandonment. Oh my gosh, they're going to leave me. Or feelings of sadness related to that. You start to think, where the sex isn't as connected as it was before.
Yeah.
And we start to downward spiral and focus on that each time thereafter we have sex.
I've heard that many times in calls over that.
Yeah.
Like, that somebody feels that they're not as connected when you're trying to be intimate with it. In fact, I just saw it in, I think, an email coaching in the last couple of days, where somebody was talking about that and just made them spiral, worrying more and more because I'm trying to connect with them. I can feel something's off, and then that anxiety causes you to try and overcompensate and do all those things, and it just really hurts the connection. It's hard when you're going through it and feeling that.
It's like trying to not think about a pink elephant when somebody brings it up.
Yep.
It seems like it's the one thing that your mind is focusing on.
Yeah.
And sometimes we can become so goal-oriented of, this, I need to perform for this person. We need to be able to both climax and make this a really positive experience. And if we don't, then it means that our relationship isn't good. So sometimes our anxiety can really get to our minds and impact the future of that connection. My advice to that is just to take it slow. And there is tons of literature nowadays. I'm so happy that as a society, we're becoming more comfortable with talking about sex. There's many resources out there, many tools talking about mindfulness and sex to work on some of those issues.
Another point we want to get to is that anxious people tend to be less concerned about getting pregnant or pregnancy, because now it's like, I gotcha.
Gotcha.
Reminds me of Dave Chappelle. But you know what I mean? Like, now it's like, oh, well, we have a child together. They're going to be more likely to work through it, more likely to stay, more likely to stick around. And so, that may come up, and it may even come out in their fantasies, like, having a kid, getting pregnant, all those things. And I think on some biological deep level in our unconscious, it makes us feel safer, like, oh, they're going to be more likely to stick around,
And somebody with a more anxious attachment style might be more likely to bring up those conversations of, what if we did get pregnant? What if we did have a child together? And some of those conversations might be happening way too prematurely. Now, not to say that it's not important to have these conversations if you're having unprotected sex, because that is the reality. These things can happen and do happen. So please be wise with your sexual safety choices in that regard. But sometimes even in protected situations, or if the intimacy starts to escalate, then, the anxious person might be more likely to say, well, what if we were to have a kid? And what would we name that kid? And, let's prepare the bedroom. And it's like, wait a minute.
It reminds me of the meme where it's like the woman's like, would you still love me if I was a worm?
Yeah. It's like thinking about this like hypothetical future scenario that's not even there yet and trying to work it out, but we're having sex, we should at least have a baby name ready. Okay, relax. One thing at a time.
All right, so a lot to think about there, but these are just some of the components. Share yours if you have any others that you think we missed or that you've thought of that happened in your relationship. If you want to get our help personally, you can do that on my website, askcraig.net. I do email coaching and I do Skype. Coach Victoria is also available for Skype coaching.
I'm here whenever you'd like to chat.
Just click on her name at the top of the website to schedule with her. But that's it for this video. I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
and we will talk with you soon.